I want to get a divorce. I never thought that these little words could destroy the whole world around me. Unfortunately, my soon-to-be ex-wife said those words so easily. Each syllable rolled off her tongue as if she were ordering a regular menu item. There was no ceremony, no last meal. At least she was thoughtful. She collected all my things and was waiting for me as soon as I crossed the threshold. My name is Steve Miller, and my loving wife is Julie. We are both in our early 40s, and our 2 children, Josh and Emily, are in college and do not live at home. My wife looks even better than the day we got married, despite the fact that she has gained some weight since having children. But further, her strict training regimen allowed her to lose unwanted weight and stay in optimal condition. Unfortunately, the same could not be said about me. Some men acquire a distinguished appearance as they get older, but I, a receding hairline, a belly flap, and a gray-tinged goatee hiding my double chin. My silence must have been a signal to her to keep twisting the knife. Steve, it's not that I don't love you, I'm just not attracted to you. I feel like we have grown apart over the past few years, and now that the kids are out of the house, there's really no reason for us to continue this charade. When we first got married, there were 3 of us at the altar: Julie, me, and our unborn child. Emily was unplanned, but she was our favorite child. I gave up my dream of going to college to become something better. I became a laborer, taking any job I could find to put food on the table. I jumped from one job to another. Our love seemed to blossom because 2 years later, Josh was born. Because Julie wanted to stay home, I had to work twice as hard to make sure we had everything we needed for our growing family. 10 years ago, I stopped jumping from one dead-end job to another in order to secure my family's financial future. 10 years ago, I completed my degree online while working 40 to 50 hours. It was exhausting trying to work full-time and then go to classes. However, I made this sacrifice because I knew that my family depended on me. Julie was a stay-at-home mom, raising her children and going to parent-teacher conferences. It's not like I've been cheating on my wife these past 10 years. Well, not in the purest sense of the word. While I had every opportunity to visit strip clubs or have a call girl in my hotel room, the money I made went entirely back to the family. The life of a consultant is feast or famine. There are some months when you have customers, but there are other times when you wonder if you can put food on the table. And that's just the right side of my brain talking. The left side loves my wife, so the thought of even flirting on the side goes against every fiber of my being. No, I'm married to my job. With my wife being a stay-at-home mom and my desire for my children to have the best, I worked my 40 hours plus all the time on the road. This meant that I was away a lot. I was the very definition of a road warrior. In the first half of the week, I could easily end up in New York, and in the second, in San Diego. I missed a lot of family events, but it wasn't by choice. If I could be home to see my children graduate from 8th grade or even high school, I would. However, college isn't cheap, and money doesn't grow on trees. And it's not that I love my job. I'm a human resources consultant. I help organizations select the right personnel. While management liked our lean processes and cost savings, I always encourage the organization to reinvest those savings back into its employees. Unfortunately, management does not always view its employees as assets, but rather as costs and expenses that need to be cut. Although I, of course, can put on rose-colored glasses and believe that I am doing good to everyone. At the end of the day, I know I will impact the lives of families wherever I go. For example, a single mother worked as a data processor for an organization. She spent most of her time printing reports and storing them in folders. At the end of the week, she destroyed these reports. My research showed that no one read them. By simply not printing reports, it not only eliminated paper costs and reduced the cost of shredding services, but also lost its position. I hated this aspect of my job. However, I have always found the strength to carry on with my life, knowing that my wife and family love me and need me. True, I could quit and find a job that doesn't require a lot of travel. However, this would be a major pay cut. Many of my arguments with Julie were about money and financial issues. The kids needed her to be home and serve as their driver, and any other set of reasons why she shouldn't have a full-time job. And let's not forget that each of them had to have the latest smartphone with data plans, the latest fashion trends, the biggest house, rental cars, and any other material possessions that were needed to make their quality of life just perfect. I tried to breathe life back into our marriage. 20 years? That's all? So, can't we try? Steve, do you really want to pay someone to handle our divorce? Don't make it any harder than it already is. Her smile usually made me melt. However, this smile was full of daggers. Think about it this way. We can start over while we're still young. I felt completely helpless. I don't know how I managed to resist. I wanted to fall to my knees and beg my Rock of Gibraltar, my North Star, not to leave me. Julie, I can quit my job. I can find something locally. We can try to make it work. I know I wasn't here. Not that I like being on the road all the time. Please, we once had something. We just need to rekindle that flame. My pleas and reluctance to accept what she considered inevitable began to weigh on her. Steve, you're starting to sound like a weakling. A real man accepts his fate and copes with it. Her betrayal struck a nerve. When we were young and all my friends wanted to go to a party or even just hang out, my message to society was always, a real man will accept his fate and deal with it. I had a responsibility to my wife and children. I needed to grow up quickly. Julia always made love to me as a reward for being a man and not a reckless boy. I'm sure my wife said something when she found her voice, but I wasn't listening anymore. I just took the suitcases she had packed for me, went out to my car, and drove away. Julie was crying, pounding on the windshield, begging me to stop and asking for forgiveness. Until today, I would see those tears and do everything I could to comfort and make those tears disappear. But it was not for nothing that Othello called woman's tears crocodile tears. I found myself going to some Irish pub that all my friends were raving about on Facebook. With all my travels, I never had the opportunity to visit. It was a strange and quiet place, somewhere where you could wash away your suffering and not worry for hours. "Where are you?" A female voice interrupted my deep philosophical discussion with a glass of Southern Comfort. Looking up at the sound of a woman's voice, I noticed that several hours had passed. Heather Wilson, my personal assistant, found a seat next to me at the bar. "Your daughter is terribly worried. She tried to call you a dozen times. When she couldn't reach you, she called me." She stopped for a moment to take my hand. Luckily, it was the same hand that held my whiskey glass. She told me what happened. "I'm so sorry, Steve." I looked from my glass to my phone. Indeed, there were many missed calls from both Emily and this stupid bitch. I simply shook my head and said, looking into my amber reflection, "I'm not in the mood to listen to how this is right, and here it is. Karma really is a real bitch. All those people whose lives I spent these years on finally received their cosmic justice. My family correctly appreciated my role as a husband and father. Listen, why don't you get a hotel room and sleep it off? Maybe after you get enough sleep, everything will be different in the morning. I don't know which is worse. The fact that I hate and want to hurt the woman I love so much, or the fact that I hate myself for wanting to hurt the woman I love. Somehow, Heather got me out of the bar and into the hotel. One sip, and I didn't even touch it. I went to that bar with the intention of drowning my sorrows. Unfortunately, I don't like to drink, and I certainly can't stand the taste of Southern Comfort. Sleep didn't come easy. All work and no play makes me a boring boy. In the end, sleep did come. However, the next day brought its own form of horror. I tried to meet my wife face to face and talk to her at the table, which Heather insisted on. After all, 20 years of marriage is worth saving, right? Unfortunately, she was not at home. Knowing Julie, there was only one place she could be, the gym. I didn't necessarily want to make a public scene, but I needed to talk to her, and she owed me at least that. Entering the hall, I immediately saw my wife, but she did not notice me. God, she looked so good. The sports bra she wore hugged her breasts, showing off her fullness. The cropped cut showed off tone and tan. The yoga pants hugged every curve of her body, putting her well-sculpted ass on display. She seemed to be in good spirits, as if her life had never missed a beat. "Hey, buddy, don't stare too long at this beautiful piece of ass. Unless you're Tweedledum or Tweedledick, you're not going anywhere near this lady. Believe me, I tried," admitted some muscular guy who had no neck. "I'm sorry?" The man pointed to what looked like a walking mass of muscle with a head attached to it. The man grabbed my wife by the ass and lifted her up easily. She wrapped her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck and began to discuss something intimately. "This is Tweedledum. Just muscles and no brain," explains my newfound friend. "However, he appears to have all the right muscles in the right places." "Oh," the tone of my voice only encouraged my friend, as if he wanted to crush my mood even more. "And behind him is Tweedledick." And sure enough, as soon as Tweedledum lowered my wife to the ground, she walked up to the other thug. Unlike the hug she shared with Doom, Julie only wrapped one leg around the man's waist while his arms supported her thigh and ass. His hands moved with a feeling of something familiar. More importantly, they shared an intimate and long kiss. "Damn, they should probably get a room, huh, buddy?" The guy next to me grinned. Indeed, their actions were as close to a public display of sexual intercourse as one could get. It is now clear that separation is not the only reason for my divorce. The alpha male in me wanted to rush right in and get my wife back. However, a man who actually uses his brain cells realized that my alpha male would be physically crushed by both of these Neanderthals without either of them breaking a sweat. For a brief moment, part of me wanted to feel the physical pain so that the emotional pain would be more complete. Oh, here comes her boy. Damn, I would love to be the guy she made that baby with. When it rains, it pours. I hoped that my son would raise my banner and defend his father's honor. I hoped that he would be offended by his mother's behavior, not because I wanted him to fight for me, but because he had to see these people tearing his family apart. But he didn't. My son didn't like team sports when he was younger. At school, he was ridiculed for dropping passes, missing baskets, or knocking the ball away during games. When he announced that he was starting to engage in wrestling and weightlifting, I was proud of him. He had my competitive spirit, and I thought he was overcoming those jerks at school by becoming this chiseled, handsome guy based on the advice I gave him on the phone. I see now that Tweedledum and Tweedledick probably influenced his decision by being his surrogate fathers. All I needed was for my daughter to appear so that the betrayal of my family would be complete. I walked out the door. What's good about fighting? I had already lost and I didn't even know there was a battle. As I started the car, the chorus of Fleetwood Mac's Gold Dust Woman came on the radio. 2 years have passed since the divorce. Perhaps I was having a midlife crisis. Or maybe I was just a selfish bitch who didn't want to give up the single woman lifestyle I had created while my ex-husband was away working long, hard hours to support his family. The divorcee went as smoothly as could be expected. I got the house and all the capital in the house, and he got a pension and air miles. The only thing I really didn't expect was that when I tried to apply for spousal support, his lawyer brought up photographs of my infidelity as evidence. Not just with Rick, but with Rick and Ed. Even worse, he managed to take a photo of Rick and Ed groping, me in front of my son at the gym. Where did he get them from? I don't know. However, Steve was a gentleman. He didn't want to change the divorce from irreconcilable differences to adultery. No, he just didn't want to pay his ex-wife alimony. It was my lover's responsibility. I'm paraphrasing, but looking back, I'm sure that's what he was thinking. The judge also thought the same thing. Steve continued to pay for his children's college expenses while they attended. But since Emily was 20 and Josh was 18, he didn't have to pay child support. On the surface, my life was lonely when Steve graduated and began working as a human resources consultant. He went away and was at home on weekends, and those were the good times. When things were slow, he sat at home, but he was on edge. It was as if every dollar spent was another complaint or another scream between me and him. Luckily, I had children, but they always needed me to take them to practice or take them shopping or take them to see friends. If they weren't busy after school, they were at home. And like all children, they fought. The pressure of being both mother and father weighed heavily on me, and I resented Steve being away so often. But don't get me wrong. When Steve was home, he was the best husband a woman could ask for. He did my sweet deeds without question, or paid for them if he could not do it himself. He always sent flowers on important days: my birthday, our anniversary, Valentine's Day, and even the day we met. He always called and tried to cheer me up when I was down. Having Skype was great, so the kids and I could always see him when he called. He may not have been home, but he was always there in digital video. Unfortunately, this was not enough for me, at least then. Steve advised me to join a gym. At first, I was angry with him. Was he implying that I was fat? This asshole also allowed himself to relax. He always ate fast food on those damn business trips. How dare he suggest that I go to the gym to lose weight? However, he explained his reasons. He must have realized that I had very little adult contact and that I was losing myself in the role of mother. Steve understood me so well. No wonder he ended up in the human resources department. He gets along well with people. Part of me wishes I could be as insightful as him. Maybe I wouldn't be where I am today if I were smarter. At first, the baby fat did not come off. Going to the gym was a chore. All the women there were so pretty and in good shape. I felt like a cow being led to slaughter. Maybe I was their cool project, or maybe just another piece of fresh meat. Anyway, Rick and Ed took me under their wing and helped me develop a strength training plan. At first, I thought Rick and Ed were just gym rats trying to help someone who was struggling. I fully expected them to ditch me for younger girls once I got the hang of it. As the weight started to fall off and stay off, they shared my excitement. I wanted to share this with Steve. I proudly showed off my new body to my husband on Skype. But damn, he seemed so melancholic and so damn depressed. He was grateful and supported me in every possible way, but it was clear from his voice that he was depressed. It got to the point where I hated calling him. I didn't want to hear about his bad day. Not all of us are failures. Since I had been around Rick and Ed all week, their manly physiques were certainly easy on the eyes. So when Steve came home showing signs of being piggy and unwell, I wanted nothing to do with him. He would certainly like some love. I fulfilled my duties as a wife, although I'm sure the Academy would have given me an Oscar several times for some of my performances. Part of me was grateful that he didn't have the strength or stamina to go there more than once. I think I would be sick if I had to do this twice in one night. Luckily for me, when the lights are off, everyone looks the same. Again, looking back, I realized that if I had seen or known how much his work affected him, or how my indifference to his emotional well-being was hurting him, perhaps things would have been different. But no, I was lost in my own world, and it certainly didn't help when Rick became Asshole Rick. His body was a work of art. He probably went back in time so that Michelangelo could use his body as a model for the statue of David, with one significant exception. Of course, Rick probably took advantage of my vulnerability when my husband left, but I allowed myself to be taken. Rick's body is nothing less than a schoolgirl fantasy. The fact that he wanted to be with me only intensified this feeling, and it wasn't a one-night stand. Rick was always watching me, whether it was in the women's locker room at the gym, in the men's locker room at the gym, or at my house when the kids were gone. He had a sex drive that drove me crazy. There were times when we couldn't even get to my house, and we would stop somewhere and do it. I felt alive again. I felt young, wild, and free. I haven't felt this way since I married Steve. Well, his buddy Ed must have known about our dates and acted like a little kid. Rick encouraged me to be kinder to his friend. Well, being nicer means showing me off in front of Ed. Each of them had their own advantages in sex. But as I look back, neither of them wanted to hug afterwards. If I could, I'd go back in time and spank my stupid ass. "You should have seen the flowers delivered to Sammy," exclaimed one of my colleagues. It's pretty funny, really. The entire time I was married to Steve, he always wanted me to get a job so I could provide myself with extra income. He whined about his job and how he wished he could do something else. I was such a bitch when I told him to go for it and stopped whining about my job. But now that we're divorced, I work 40 hours as a clerk in a billing office. Instead of telling him to stop whining, I should have told him to take his frustrations out at the gym. It's one of the few things that helps me relax after a long week of work. From her mysterious lover? Asked the other one in a teasing tone. I hated Sammy, not because she had done anything, but because she was 10 years younger and had a tight little body. The worst part is that she's the kind of girl who knows she's attractive, but doesn't show it off. And without showing it, she's just waving it in your face that she's great while you're getting older. I'm sure she's laughing madly, knowing I have to work twice as hard at the gym to maintain what I have. When she receives these heart-shaped boxes filled with chocolate, she shares her goodies with all her colleagues. I figured it out. I noticed that she hasn't eaten a bite. She makes all the women around her fatter so she can look much better. I couldn't resist starting to dig. Yes, why haven't we seen this supposed Romeo? We only see you in these photos. I'm sure everyone in the room could hear my envy, especially with that bouquet of roses in a crystal vase sitting on her desk. Every weekend, Sammy and her boyfriend always seem to be going somewhere or doing something exciting. She has photos of herself kayaking in Cumberland or standing under a waterfall at Burgess Falls State Park. When they're not doing the outdoors, she's going to a concert at the Grand Ole Opry or hanging out on the Lower Broad listening to live music. "Oh, guys," Sammy retorts playfully, ever so carefully deflecting my attack. "He just doesn't like being in front of the camera. He is embarrassed about his appearance. I do not know why. Okay, yeah. He is bald, but bald by choice." I couldn't help but laugh cynically, but she simply continued. "Pair that with his goatee and toned body." She blushes. "Roses on a long stem." "Again?" Helen exclaimed, late to the party as always. This woman choked on any sweet gesture. Sammy, the smug bitch with a nose, nodded her head as she read the card that accompanied the bouquet of roses. "He said he had something special for me tonight, and he invites you all to come if you'd like. He rented the 3rd floor of the Merchant's Restaurant on Lower Broad. You are all welcome to bring your partner, and this dinner will be paid for. So we'll finally meet this mystery man of yours?" "Yes, and just know that he's all mine," Sammy replied in a possessive tone. "Not unless one of us steals it," said a voice from behind. I don't know who it was, maybe Carrie or Beth. I haven't had a good lunch since my divorce. I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. Steve and I used to go to the Watermark restaurant. He always reminded me to save room for dessert because he knew how much I love strawberry jam cake. Rick would tell me off for messing with frosting because it's greasy. Not to mention, Rick couldn't afford dinner at Watermark. Finally, I'll have the opportunity to show this big guy what a real dinner is. So I called him as soon as I got back to my desk. "Rick, one of the girls is having some kind of party at Merchant today. Her boyfriend has rented the 3rd floor and dinner will be provided. Will you come with me?" "Oh, sorry, baby. Today I pulled out my ATV. I'm going to work with him. Why don't you come and give me a massage? I'm sure this will help me get better." God, that's all he thinks about. A nice date means going to the gym and then returning home for another workout under the covers. If I'm lucky, we can go to the Longhorn Steakhouse and I can watch him eat a piece of beef in less than 15 minutes. Come on, Rick. We won't have to stay long. You can meet my friends and we can finally have a nice dinner, dishes and all. Please, can't you do this for me just once? Why don't you ask your son to come with you? I'm sure Josh would love to meet your friends. You know very well that my son is in prison for not paying child support. Sometimes you're such a jerk. I slammed the phone in anger. His comments about my son really hurt. Josh was in jail for failing to pay child support. Josh treated his women much the same way Rick and Ed treated theirs. He would have fun with them until he got tired of them, and then he would throw them to the curb. Girls, however, often showed up on the doorstep, pregnant with his child. In addition, the boy could not hold down a job to save his life, and God forbid, wear a damn condom. He adopted these traits from Rick and Ed. I would have asked Emily to come with me, but we haven't spoken since the divorce was final. Although she understood my point of view, she felt that I was not trying to make amends. She definitely didn't like Rick or Ed. She felt uncomfortable around them, and it seemed to her that they were always undressing her with their gaze. It was probably Rick. Ed was just a big teddy bear, too stupid to have a lecherous bone in his body. He will be Rick's assistant and join in with what Rick is doing. So, I intended to go to dinner alone. Who knows what the evening might bring. Exiting the elevator on the 3rd floor, I almost collided with a man who could best be called Marlboro. He was physically fit, but not as muscular an athlete as Rick or Ed. He looked stern. He was bald, but a closer look would have shown that he was bald by choice. The goatee only emphasized his cowboy look. At first glance, I knew it must be Sammy's boyfriend. However, looking into his eyes, I realized who he was, her personal, cold-blooded Steve Miller. Never in my life have I felt so embarrassed and humiliated, not because of Steve's actions, but because of my own. Here was a very attractive cowboy who was once my husband and whom I humiliated more than once. Well, of course he remembered. Julie? The awkward moment, of course, did not go unnoticed by any of us. Steve, you look good. Has life treated you well? I was nervous. I tried to make small talk. Deep down, some part of me clung to the hope that maybe it was just a coincidence that Steve was here. Maybe he's just a friend of someone's friend, or something like that. Maybe I can erase the mistake. People deserve a second chance at life, right? He looked down at himself, and then looked up again with his usual smile. God, how I wish I could kiss him again. His hugs and kisses were the best. He made you feel like you were the only girl in the world. I took his hugs for granted. Well, I guess you can say that everything has changed for me. I no longer work as a consultant. I am now the CEO and president of a staffing agency here in town. I don't have to travel, so I have plenty of time to go hiking and just relax and enjoy nature. He patted himself on the stomach. He worked out this tire. But look at you. You look as good as ever. Well, you know how much I love spending countless hours in the gym. Even as I uttered these words, I immediately wanted to take them back. The last thing I wanted him to remember was my gym time and my time with Rick and Ed. I could hit myself over the head with a piece of wood right now. Maybe I just thought he looked around quickly. I know he wanted to know if I was with someone. Still, Steve took it all in stride. So what brings you here? Date? Steve laughed slightly and nodded. You could say that. He patted the pocket of his sports jacket, where I noticed a small bulge. I had no doubt that the bulge was about the same size as the small black velvet box that contained the engagement ring. I invited her friends and family to dinner so they could take part in the evening's festivities. There was so much I wanted to say. There was so much that I wanted to give back and try to get back the husband that I had lost. However, the battle was over. The time to sort things out was 2 years ago, when I told him that I wanted to get a divorce. I can't tell if my tears were tears of self-pity or tears of happiness for him. He deserved to be happy after I left him. My silence must have been a signal for him to continue. Julie, I had no idea you'd be here. I quickly interrupted him. I know, Steve. I'm happy for you. Sammy is a very happy girl. My voice began to break. I apologized in a whisper and ran to the ladies' room. As I tried to pull myself together, I heard soft music playing a bittersweet song sung by Roxette. Listen to your heart when it calls you. Listen to your heart. There is nothing more you can do. I don't know where you're going, and I do not know why. But first, listen to your heart. Say goodbye to it. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.